Hey, welcome back to The Question, Blog Talk Radio conversation today with Doug Pagitt and Tony Jones, guest host, talking about religion and all things religious in their religious way. And we're talking a little bit here about the power of magisteriums and institutional orders within religion.
And the inability that those institutions seem to have to admit their weaknesses and mistakes. And it reminds me of the last couple weeks in this online debate that I was engaged in about about ordination of my friend Adam Walker Cleveland in the Presbyterian Church USA. Yeah. And look, I have a ton of friends in the PCUSA, including the current moderator of the PCUSA, Bruce Reyes-Chow, who, is a pastor of what could very well be considered an emergent church in San Francisco area, and I think he gets it. But in general, the system is so reticent to change. So there's another guy in the PCUSA system named Drew Tetusco who's got a really great blog that I think your listeners would appreciate if they just Google Notes from Off Center.
Notes from where? Notes from what?
Notes from Off Center.
Notes from Off Center. I'll put that in the chat room.
I do it because he's got a great blog post up now about the history of seminary and the MDiv. And basically, as maybe some of your listeners will remember that they had a pastor growing up who didn't have an MDiv. He had a BD, a Bachelor of Divinity, because there was no such thing as an MDiv ago.
Huh.
You went to undergrads. You came out of undergrad trained to be a pastor because you were trained basically in piety and all the, where I went to college at Dartmouth and, the history of Harvard, and you would learn Latin and Greek and Hebrew. You would study the Bible, and you would study some theology, and maybe they'd toss in a little science on the side. But with the increasing secularization of our society and the rise of the social sciences in university settings, faculties became less comfortable with the fact that these colleges were training people in piety, and they were more interested in a secular university that was based more in empirical research rather than, a religious training. And so the university shifted, and seminaries were basically invented to fill the void. But Drew's point in this is twofold. It's that the MDiv is basically a manufactured degree, that it's basically
as opposed to all the other degrees that are not manufactured degrees.
Well, that it's unlike other graduate level degrees, in that it's basically equivalent of a former undergrad degree.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That got pushed out of the university setting.
Okay.
And then he compares it to people who come out with MDivs as toxic assets on the church, because now they're forced to go to graduate school before they become a pastor.
Yes.
And so they take on $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of debt to finish a 3-year master's program full time.
Yeah.
And then they come out and they're looking at the vast majority of churches in America have 100 people in them.
Yeah.
So you're going to come out and you're going to get paid $22,500 and get a health insurance plan from your denomination.
Yeah.
And when you come out with $50,000 of debt from a seminary and you have a master's degree, think about public school teachers who basically do their undergrad training in elementary ed, and they do their practicum while they're in their undergrad training. Then they get a job right after they graduate, and then what do? They work on their masters while they're working.
Yes, and to give them a greater level of pay and so on. Yeah.
Exactly, of training and pay, and they're they do it in the evenings and.
Yeah, well, Tony, I had an experience this weekend where I was at a wedding. And I wasn't doing the wedding. The priest was doing the wedding, and I was just reading the prayer. And the priest was leading the rehearsal, and she was talking to the to the parents about their response to her question of, parents, do you, support these kids, and, will you support them in their marriage? This is an Episcopal church, right? So there's a woman priest. And there was sort of a little jokey banter that went back and forth. And she said, they were kind of confused about what question she was going to ask. And she said, oh, the only question I'm going to ask you is, will you support them in their marriage? And your answer is, we will. And it sort of struck me that how this little microcosm of this experience was so much of what religious situations are like, where the person in charge not only decides what the question will be, but tells you what the answer will be, right? Yeah. So somehow it's actually a religious moment when they say, this is the question and this is the mandatory response to that predetermined question. And what I think happens...
Not only that, like, well, Doug, even think about this. Not only that, but then, and we have set up a system in which it will be so socially awkward for you to answer anything else or to have any kind of freedom in your response that everyone in the room will, you know what I'm saying? Like, most...
Yes. In fact, when they said something else like, yep, you betcha, everybody laughed, because that was so... What was funny about it was it broke... awkwardly. It wasn't the approved answer. So I think part of this magisterium and Pastor MDiv world and all of that is you get to be the one who rules over a system that has predetermined questions and mandated answers. And when you're in that system, you don't see how absolutely bizarro that is.
Right.
Until you people like us that step out of it, and you're like, you're being trained to go learn the official answers to the predetermined questions. Now, a lot of people go to seminary and they say, no, I was actually trained to be a thinker, and I'm taking my MDiv because I'm broadening my horizons and learning. And, I mean, to people like us, you can deconstruct that in about 3 questions. What seminary did you go to? Who's ordaining you? And are you sure you're going to pass your ordination test? Because they're teaching you the answers to the ordination questions, and you will just pass that on virally to the people in your community. And it just seems to be such a strange way to do religion.
Yeah, it really is odd, and I guess I can really see how the new atheists have gained such a foothold. And even though philosophers have been attacking their theories, like there's a book that's getting a lot of buzz right now by a philosopher, an unrepentant Marxist philosopher named Terry Eagleton, who's a philosopher of the first caliber and is a hardcore Marxist. And he's written a short little book that just destroys Richard Dawkins and how what horrible reasoning the new atheists use. But I do understand when the new atheists just point at Christianity, for instance, or even when a guy like Bill Maher does, and say, this is totally freaking ridiculous.
Yeah.
That these people, think that there's some magic God hovering in the sky who does whatever they pray for. Like, I get how that resonates with so many people, that criticism of religion.
Mm-hmm.
And look, people parading around in their...
doing their live action role play outfits and their little weekly meetings.
They're fancy. They wear their funny little clothes, and then it comes out like, Doug, did you read about what's just come out about these Catholic homes in Ireland where troubled youth were sent?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that on the YouTube videos here after this. So Tony, we can keep talking in just a second. Come back with the next video if you want to hear the remainder of this.